So today I'm going to be ranking some, not all, but most of the anime I watched in 2023. There are some omissions here, most of them left off just because I really didn't have anything to say about them. They were probably just forgettable or, just not interesting to talk about. I'll give an example. I watched the first season of Demon Slayer, and I didn't include that on this list because I only watched the first season, and I know that there's a ton more to that show. There's like 2 movies and a whole second season. And my reception of it was, oh, this is like a great show if you're new to anime, and it's a great gateway anime, but I wasn't getting much from it. I didn't feel like it was putting too much anything new or interesting on the table, but it was very well done, and I understand why young people or people new to anime got so much out of it. So that's why I didn't feel like ranking that doesn't really do much for me. But these are the shows that I watched that I did have something to say about. So to start it off, at the start of 2023, I didn't plan on this, but I put on an episode of Cardcaptor Sakura, and I wound up watching like 10 episodes on the first day, and then just by like a month later, I had completed the whole series. I also watched the 2 movies. I haven't seen Clear Card yet. I made a whole video on Sakura talking about it, and I thought this was a great show, great animation. Completely blew me away. Did not expect to get so into it. And Sakura, honestly, starting off strong, it's going to be an S tier. That's a show that I won't forget, and I think I'll probably wind up revisiting someday. Second is another show I didn't even intend to watch. Funny enough, I planned on watching an anime called Ghost Sweeper Mikami, but I for some reason wanted to see if Hell Teacher Nube, which is a similar supernatural shonen show from the 90s. But I was curious if it was subbed because I know Nube as a character has appeared in some of the Jump games. So I looked it up and it had been subbed. And so I was like, okay, let me check this out. I want to see if these are like decent quality subs. Some of the episodes were clearly subbed by someone who is British because it was subbed by someone who's British with assistance from an American, it seems, because Hiroshi alternates between being a football or soccer player depending on the episode, so there was definitely some wires getting crossed there. Otherwise, the subs are perfectly fine. There's nothing incredibly wrong or misrepresenting in the subs. They show their age a little bit. But the show itself is actually very great. It's a 49 episode show, and I wound up watching all of it, as well as the 3 movies that were produced for the series. I know there's an OVA. Haven't seen the OVA yet. I heard the end of the OVA is very good and it wraps everything up, and I'm going to get to that eventually. But I watched the full series and the movies, and I thought it was excellent. I thought for a show that's episodic, it does a good job of not feeling repetitive. Episodes manage to feel new by changing the perspective. There are some episodes follow Nube as the main character. Some episodes follow the kids, the students, as the main characters. Some will follow Yukime, who's a Yuki owner that is in love with Nube, and they'll follow her, and that's some of my favorite episodes are the Yukime episodes. And then even among the children, you have Miki having dedicated episodes, Hiroshi, Kyoko, and Miki, Hiroshi, and Kyoko, all their episodes feel different from another. It's not just like, oh, this is one of the kids' episodes. They all feel unique. There's also this strong sense of continuity in Nube, where past events, yokai, and characters all get brought up again. So even when they're doing episodic stories, you absolutely feel the progression. I also just like Nube because he's a Shonen Jump protagonist that doesn't need a master or sensei character to guide him because he's a teacher, and even though he's a young teacher, he is that master or sensei character, and I like that dynamic. I felt like that was really fresh. So for Nube, I'm going to give it an A tier. It is 1 spot below Sakura, and I think that may come from not feeling like the end concluded very well, and I thought it felt kind of abrupt, and I probably should watch the OVA. The OVA very well could bump it up to S tier, but I still really enjoyed what I saw. I like to call it the best 70s anime from the 90s because there's tons of very clear Go Nagai influence and stories about like there's one where it's like an unexploded bomb from World War II is under the school, which feels like something that would be a story in the 70s, but by the 90s you would think, oh, we're so far past that. But that plus like the demons having very Go Nagai inspired designs, There's a demon that like has his teacher, has Nube's sensei's face, and it reminded me so much of Jinmin from Devilman. All around, big fan of Nube. Gonna watch the OVA sometime soon. Gonna give it an A tier. All right, so now we have Godzilla S.P. If you followed me on Twitter when I was watching this show, you'll know I fucking hated it. I thought this show was abysmal. I can't believe I kept watching it. I think I was just telling myself it will get better, but sometimes it doesn't get better. Every character in this show talks like fucking MatPat, where they try to make everything sound way more complicated than it needs to be. The characters will literally communicate to each other with fucking math equations, and they'll be like, what do you mean? What's happening here? Well, imagine a universe where 6 equals 9. Then open a portal, and you're in an alternate universe. Now, the 6 is upside down. What does that mean? The lion's eating the gopher.
Freeformationism, huh?
And what does that mean?
The theory that all information that composes an animal's descendants is predetermined. Basically, inside the egg, the information that composes the future eggs that will be laid by the chick about to hatch it already exists. And inside those future eggs is information that will compose the eggs laid by the next chick, like an infinite information chain.
You mean that all of that was contained inside that message?
The first egg can be simple. Let's say you wanted to send the entire text of the Bible in 5 letters.
Impossible.
You send the 5 letters B-I-B-L-E, and the recipient references the Bible they have on hand.
Like a brain teaser?
What are you? This is a Godzilla anime. This is a Godzilla anime. Are you kidding me? Not that Godzilla anime have to be dumbed down, but like, it just feels like it's trying way too hard. And all there are going to be some human characters in this kaiju movie, right? Hello? Hello? That's how I felt watching Godzilla S.P. F tier. Alright, so Trigun Stampede. Now, when this was being advertised, and let me say, I'm a huge fan of the original Trigun, but when it was being advertised, I was skeptical, because I'm not a fan of CG animation. You know, there are CG animated anime that I've liked, and I thought, oh, these look pretty good, but you know, it's an uphill battle to get me invested in CG. Even digital animation, I can get into a cell animated show way easier than a digitally animated show. That's just my personal preference. So I saw Trigun. I don't like CG animation. I am a big fan of the original, which means I'm going to be extra, you know, I'm going to be a little extra critical because you got to live up to that original. And I saw Vash's design, and I hated Vash's design. So I was like, okay, I don't know. I'll watch it, but I don't know. And everyone was giving me shit. And I'll say this. I fucking loved it. That's an A tier. I was a big fan of Trigun Stampede. It blew me away. And there was a point, maybe it was after episode 4 only, where I was just like, okay, I was wrong. Everyone needs to watch this show. I absolutely loved it. And the only reason it doesn't get S tier is because I recommended it to so many people that after they watched it and came back to me and I started talking to them, I noticed that it does heighten the experience to have seen the original anime, because I was telling people, you don't need to have seen the original. It's self-contained. It stands upon its own. Don't worry about watching the entire original first. Just put it on and watch it. It's so good. And when I was talking to people about it, I noticed that a lot of the things I thought were cool were things that they didn't even think about. Like the fact that the character Monev the Gale has this tragic backstory. I thought that was so great, because in the original, he's one of the Gung Ho Guns, but he's just like a villain of the week almost, basically. And so when I was like, oh, that was so great that they took that character and gave him this whole traumatic backstory that made me feel for him. And they were like, oh, okay, I didn't know he was like that in the old show. I guess if I had like an expectation that he was just going to be a monster of the week and they gave him this whole backstory, it would have hit me harder. And I realized that having seen the original did heighten my experience. And I think that other people should probably watch the original before this. And the original is only 26 episodes. It's a great show. It's on streaming. Go ahead, check it out. But definitely watch the original, because it sets up expectations that the show plays with, I think. So definitely do that. But yeah, Trigun Stampede, A tier. I'm excited for season 2. All right, we're going to get into a couple of controversial ones. I think the next 3 are going to be like controversial. So Angelic Layer, after I finished Cardcaptor Sakura, I was on a Clamp kick, and I'd already seen Holic, but I had just started rewatching it because I wanted to watch a Clamp show so much, and I already knew Holic was good, so I was like, oh, I'll just watch more Holic. But I was looking at Clamp shows I hadn't seen, and Angelic Layer was one of them, and I was like, oh, well, this is great. This is, I actually owned the Blu-ray because it was like $6 for a Sentai sale, and I did pick it up, so I was like, oh, I'm gonna finally pop in this disc and check out Angelic Layer. Here's the thing about Angelic Layer. I thought it was interesting that the actual battles between the dolls, while animated well, were not fun or intriguing fights. There's no sense of the characters using tactics or strategy in the battles. They're well animated, but they're like very surface level. Like, well, if you're really strong, that means you're not as fast, so I'm going to be faster, and then that just leads to the finishing move right there. That's about the extent of the depth of some of the fights. And like I said, they're well animated, but I really wanted to see something more. I also didn't, I couldn't really get with the mother character, who, in the story, she abandons her daughter because she loses the use of her legs, and she feels like she can't be with her daughter again until she, they're using the Angelic Layer kind of technology to raise money by making it a sport, but they plan to use that to make a system where people who have lost limbs or are disabled can control artificial limbs. And the whole sport is kind of like a philanthropy thing to try and get the money and get money and push the technology of that. That I was super on board for. I thought that was really cool. But I feel like there needed to be more to the reason the mother left the daughter. It just feels so weird for a mother to abandon her kid over something like losing the ability to use your legs. There's an epic Aim for the Ace reference, but I really didn't feel for the character. Angelic Layer is going to be a probably controversial C tier, honestly. It's like a C plus. It's a big C plus. It's a very high C for me, but that's where I'm going to drop it. That's how I was feeling. Next is GR Giant Robo. So Chiaki Konica has two modes that he goes into, where he's like the biggest brain man in the world. Actually, he only has one mode. He's always in big brain mode, and sometimes that big brain mode fails him, i.e. Big O Season 2. Now, my problem with GR Giant Robo is that I felt like it did start to slip into Big O Season 2, and by the end of it, I was honestly wishing we had gotten a more traditional Giant Robo adaptation. I looked up the pilot for the original GR Giant Robo they were going to do, where it was more traditional, and it's more so that, like, Daisaku is older, but he's still doing the spy/robot fighting stuff, just with, like, older and maybe doing a little bit more mature content. I think I would have fucking loved that. I like the twist at the end that the guy from the Big Fire, the Big Fire is like a news corporation. And I like the twist that his name is Johnny Sacco, as a reference to Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. But I was getting too many Big O Season 2 vibes, and GR Giant Robo is a C tier. I would say Angelic Layer was a little better than GR Giant Robo. But both of these series I was feeling let down by. And now we have another controversial one. And what's important to remember before I rank the show is that what a show should accomplish is, it should set out a goal for itself and then accomplish a goal. And I'm judging these shows based on how well I felt they accomplished that goal and how entertained I was watching it. So Tomo-Chan is a Girl is an anime I watched. That's 12 episodes. And it's like a slice of life romance show, and they kind of just do slice of life goofy stuff. The guy is like super into sports, and the girl's a tomboy who's into sports, and the guy sees her as like his best friend, and he kind of sees her like more like a boy or like a male friend, where she has a crush on him, and she's like, oh, I want him to see me as a girl and think I'm cute. So my controversial take is that this is above Angelic Layer. Because, honestly, all I wanted from this show was every week I go in, I have some laughs, the characters are cute and charming, and at the end, we get a resolution. And it did that. I enjoyed watching every episode. I laughed. I thought the characters were cute and charming. And at the end, they get together, and I said they did exactly what they set out to do. What more could I ask, right? So yeah, Tomo-Chan is a girl. It didn't need to be, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it made me laugh every week. It was a joy to see a new episode had come out, and I had fun watching it, and I didn't feel like I wasted my time. The characters were cute and charming, and at the end they got together and went on a date, and it was really nice. So B tier, you did exactly what you needed to do. Alright, so now, Gold Lightan. So Gold Lightan I watched because I had been wanting to watch it because it got entirely subbed by High Dive when they were streaming a bunch of old Tatsunoko shows, and all of those shows got like no advertising and then they disappeared off the service. But luckily most of them were archived, and I remember finding out that Gold Lightan had been archived, and I was so happy they saved it, or saved the subs specifically. And I remember checking it out and being like, oh wow, this is in like 1080p. The quality of this is super good. And the subs were really well done. So I had it bookmarked, but what made me watch it was I've been writing this piece on Mizuho Nishikubo, and Gold Lightan was a big show in his career. It was directed by a friend of his who actually started working at Tatsunoko named Koichi Mashimo, who started actually as a trainee on Timeboken at the same time as Nishikubo. And Nishikubo had left Tatsunoko, but Mashimo got him to come back to work on Lightan, and Lightan is where he actually made a lot of the connections that would further his career in the industry. So Lightan is a big show, and also it was a very successful show for Tatsunoko post Tatsuo Yoshida's death, and a lot of people were doubting Tatsunoko at this time, so the fact that they had a hit in Gold Lightan was very important. That said, the show, while also being historically important, is a really fun show to watch. The character designs are by Ippei Kuri, Tatsuo Yoshida's brother, who, you can immediately see the Speed Racer character designs in the main character Hiro and all his friends. The action is such a throwback to their shows like Gatchaman and Speed Racer and even Kurenai Sanshiro, because it's super intense. There's some episodes that are beautifully animated, and I noted I made a note that like some of these fights feel like they're from the Bubble era. They feel like they're from Bubble era OVAs. They're so good. Nishikubo's directing is super on point. Mamoru Oshii participated. This is where Nishikubo and Mamoru Oshii would actually meet. It was really fun. It also has some of the humor of Timeboken, so it's like a mixture of Tatsunoko's classic action shows mixed with their goofy comedy stuff, and it mixes really well in this case. So Gold Lightan, I'm gonna put it up. I think my only issue is that there's episodic stuff that is a little forgettable, but overall, Lightan's going in A tier. I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a fan of classic Tatsunoko stuff. Now we're going to Saint Tail. Saint Tail I watched. I didn't plan on watching this. I bought the Blu-ray because Discotech put it out, and I want to support their magical girl stuff because I know that shoujo stuff historically doesn't sell well, but a lot of that stuff isn't dubbed, or not dubbed. A lot of that stuff isn't subbed, and I think that if we support the ones that do come out, we can start seeing more shows that haven't been subbed get official subs and official releases, and that would be great to see. So I bought Saint Tail. I popped in an episode just to get a sense of it, and I actually really liked it. I thought the style reminded me so much of 90s Sailor Moon. I mean, it is a 90s magical girl show, but it's done by TMS, not Toei. And in fact, there's one episode, I believe it was episode 33, where it felt like it was invoking so much Sailor Moon that I had to check if Junichi Sato worked on this show, because it felt like a fucking Junichi Sato episode, and he didn't, but man, the vibes are there. And I'm a huge fan of 90s Sailor Moon. It's in my top 10, one of my favorite anime of all time. So Saint Tail, I think my issue with it, though, is while she has her friend Sarah, I would have liked to have seen her interact more with her other friends at the school. There's an episode where two of her friends make like a club that they're gonna catch Saint Tail, and she feels so awkward because they want her in the club, but she's like, she is Saint Tail, so she can't really do anything. I would have loved to see more episodes that incorporate her other friends from the class. It stayed very Mamie, Seira, Asuka Jr. centric, just kind of those three characters specifically. And I would have loved to have seen more episodes focusing on characters in her friend group, and I'd love to see her interacting more with her friend group to a greater extent. So I think that was one of the main issues, and that's one of the things I like about Sailor Moon, is that you have that group dynamic, and I love seeing that group dynamic in Magical Girl series. And then also another thing is that her hedgehog Ruby, I don't like its face, so Saint Tail is going to be a B tier, unfortunately. I mean, B tier is not bad at all. I would say it's a high B tier. If we're going in order, I'll even put it above Tomo-Chan just so there's no hard feelings. But Saint Tail was really good, and I definitely recommend it. But it's gonna be a high B tier for me. Okay, now moving on to Akiba Maid War. This is a show that came out last year, but it came out in 2022. But it came out during such a stacked season, I feel like it did get a little neglected. I mean, it came out the same, I believe it was the same season as like Mob Psycho 3, Chainsaw Man, Witch from Mercury was coming out. And so just like this super stacked season. I think even one of the Bleach whatevers. Bleach isn't on this list. People know how I feel about Bleach. I'm going to take a moment from Akiba Maid War. I wanted to try getting into the big three, and I started with Bleach because I thought it would be the one I liked most, and I watched 124 episodes, and I didn't like it, like, at all. I love the first arc, the Substitute Shinigami arc, lots of Go Nagai influence. I love Rukia and Ichigo's relationship. The episode with Grand Fisher is a beautiful episode where, Ichigo basically reveals that the reason why he wants to be a Soul Reaper is that he has all this guilt about his mom's death, and he blames himself for it. And Rukia basically says, like, I know that I'm not supposed to let you be a Soul Reaper and that there will be ramifications on me, but I want to help you get over that guilt, and I'm willing to put my neck on the line to help you. And I think that's such a beautiful episode. And I love the guy who comes from Soul Society, and he sees that happen and goes, hey, they sent me here to arrest you. I think you're cool and all. I'm going to say I didn't see anything, but, like, keep an eye out. And I love that the guy was so cool. That's an amazing episode. Beautifully done. Bleach fans rank it the most boring arc, and I want to strangle them. And then it turns into Soul Society, which is Kubo's homage to the Sanctuary arc from Saint Seiya, which is cool, but there's 3 training arcs that all feel like nothing happens. All the fights are characters jobbing for Ichigo. Bleach fans shit on Orihime for being, like, useless, when it's like, no. At this point in the story, everyone's jobbing for Ichigo. Chad has to lose this fight so Ichigo can win. Orihime has to lose a fight so Ichigo can win. They're all jobbing for Ichigo at that point. And that annoys me, that, like I said, the team dynamic is gone. They go in as a team, and almost immediately the team dynamic is gone. It's long. They interrupt it to randomly have training arcs. The training is it's the worst anime training I've ever seen, where it's just Ichigo. One of his trainings is just you have a sword fight and get stronger. It's like I thought we were beyond this. Like something. How about he has to go through some sort of test of his character or something maybe. It's just so frustrating. And I checked out the manga because people were saying, oh, the manga's better, and I will agree that Kubo has strengths as an artist that shine in his manga that are not things that work or, can be replicated in an anime. Like, one of the great things I noticed is that when he draws fights, there's this kinetic energy to the way he draws fights where it's like, oh wow, I can almost feel the character moving just by looking at the panel. It's not like looking at it and I can visualize it. I don't need to try and visualize it because I immediately do by seeing the art. There's characters hitting each other, and just he adds these details that, wow, I can feel that impact. I know if that was a hard hit or a soft hit. hear the sound of the metal clashing when the swords hit. Transferring that to an anime, it's not impressive because it's already animated. His skills are specifically in the world of manga, I believe. And I also think that Bleach fans are the most, they are the most aggressive power scalers next to Dragon Ball fans. The Bounce arc actually had a couple of interesting fights where they had to think of like creative ways, like the fight in the hospital where Ichigo throws like the oxygen tank and the lighter to dissolve the water. And I was like, oh, that's like the most creative thing that's happened in Bleach, and it's in this filler arc that I hate, or that everyone hates. But all the comments on the side I was watching it were like, this sucks. If this was canon, he would use his Bankai and kill this guy in one hit. And it's like, they're finally doing something creative in these fights, and you just want him to use Bankai and kill him. But that's my rant. That's how I feel about Bleach. Akiba Maid War, on the other hand, great show. I love the characters. I thought it was insane how like they have these very genuine homages to like Yakuza movies. Like, it doesn't feel like it's making fun of Yakuza movies where it's like, oh, it's a Yakuza movie, but they're cute girls. It's like, it's a Yakuza movie, but they're cute girls. No wink at the camera. No wink at the camera, we're for real. And I know it's a pun because like maid is in Japanese would be maido, which sounds like underworld. But even just that play on words, they did so well with it. Aya Hirano as a panda who doesn't speak except for like one episode where she has her sad backstory is so good. There's an Ashita no Joe episode. I'm going to cut out some of the things I said because I spoiled the series, and even though I was willing to spoil other shows, this one is recent enough that I'm like, just watch it. I know it's still kind of new, just watch it. I'm going to cut out my spoiler talk and just watch it. Great shit. It's A tier, by the way. A tier. Final Fantasy Unlimited. So I watched Final Fantasy Unlimited in a Discord call as a joke once. We watched like 2 episodes. So people were asking me because I was talking about weird mistakes they made in the dub. When I would watch episodes on Discord with my friends, I would put the dub on because they're casual scum. But when I'd watch it on my own, I'd switch to the subs. Not that I hate dubs or refuse to watch them, but this is a particularly low quality dub. The dub for Final Fantasy Unlimited was done by Monster Island. If you don't know, Monster Island is a satellite studio for ADV, so it was basically ADV's lower paying studio. And not only were there less voice actors, the acting pool was much smaller, but their sound work was a lot shoddier. I called out on Twitter how there's actually 2 episodes of Final Fantasy Unlimited where the entire episode has an echo effect over all of the voice actors.
行きなよ、チョビ。異界は動いてるって言うから、今ここであの群れと離れたら、次にいつ会えるかわかんないんだよ。わかるよ。僕だってお父さんやお母さんと一緒にいたいもん。だから。
Go ahead, Chobi. Wonderland is constantly moving. If you don't join them now, there's no telling when you'll see them again. This may be your only chance to go. I know how you feel. I want to be with my mom and dad too. Go. We'll be just fine without you, Chobi.
I watched the first 2 episodes dubbed in a Discord call, and then I just watched it on my own. And it became like this gag where my friends, whenever I talked to them, they'd ask me for an update on Final Fantasy Unlimited. And I'd be like, okay, so today they met a guy named Fungo who kind of looks like Bart Simpson, but he's like a bald albino. But also the show doesn't have a proper ending. It ends where the good guys and the bad guys both make their ultimate summon, and then the summons attack each other, and it blows up, and then it fades to black, and that's the end of the show. It's not supposed to be mysterious. It's literally done that way because Square lost so much money on Final Fantasy The Spirits Within that the show was supposed to go for 52 episodes and they cut it down to 25. So it's supposed to be the halfway point of the show, but they ran out of money and that's just the end. I didn't like the story, I didn't like the characters, I didn't like the dub especially, and it doesn't have a conclusion of any kind, really. So Final Fantasy Unlimited is going to be in F tier. Space Adventure Cobra is one of the best anime I've watched in literally fucking years. Have you ever watched an anime and you just start seeing like, oh, every anime rips this off, and I never knew that this is where it all came from. Like, so much. You wouldn't think Battle Shonen took from Cobra, but like Jesus Christ, JoJo's, the Joseph Joestar being a goofy guy who's like super good at strategy. That's just Cobra. Hell, Polnareff and Whole Horse are both just like extensions of Cobra. The Anubis fight in part 3 is just like the Swordian race, the sword race from Cobra, the Swordians. He's like the prototype for like the goofy. I already mentioned Joseph Joestar, but also characters like Usopp from One Piece, where it's just like someone who you don't expect to be as clever as they are, and they sort of use that to their advantage in a fight. And I love seeing that. That's like my favorite type of shonen protagonist. Even fucking Trigun. I kept seeing Trigun things in this where he's the, you know, he wears red, blonde hair, and he's like this famous outlaw, but he's so goofy that everyone's just like, you can't be the real Cobra. No, there's no way this goofy lunatic is Cobra. And then he just does something incredible, and they're like, I can't believe it. This is the real guy. That's just, it's totally just, Trigun just totally got that from Cobra. And like I said, I love Trigun, but like, it was so interesting seeing that that's where it comes from. It comes from Cobra. I fucking love Rug Ball. I was watching Rug, and now Cobra didn't invent it, but I actually felt like, oh, this is like an homage to Astro Ketsudan or Team Astro, which was a shonen manga from the 70s where they play baseball, but like it's baseball with superpowers and it's incredibly violent. And I thought it was really cool that Rug Ball felt like a giant homage to that manga. I'm sure Terisawa was doing that intentionally. The finale, the final arc, I think Guardians of the Galaxy ripped off that final arc. There's some stuff in Guardians of the Galaxy that feels like they were watching Cobra. Not in who the villain was. The villain reveal is kind of insane, but like, I remember just when they introduced the character Pumpkin, I'm like, this just feels like Drax. Like, when they have to break into a jail to get him, and then he's like this super powerful guy that's like kind of dim-witted, but like super strong. And like, this is just Drax, right? I genuinely wonder if they had watched Space Adventure Cobra. So Cobra it easily made it into one of my top 10 anime, my top 10 favorites. Because, you know, I'd always had like my solid 8, and then the 9th and 10th had always like switched out, but I'm like, nah, Cobra's going up there. And that's why Cobra is going in S tier. I'm going to put it ahead of Sakura. I like them both, but like Cobra resonates with me more because it has all that like the shonen stuff, the cool battle stuff. I love the aesthetic of being inspired by Star Wars before Star Wars was like ingrained as a legend. I mean, obviously it was a hit as soon as it came out, but like the Cobra TV anime came out before Return of the Jedi. So the movies were still super fresh, and it's so cool to see. Star Wars was still this untouchable series that had no flaws in most people's eyes, and it's so bright. It was so bright and vibrant, and it felt so new. And you can see that reflected in Cobra, that love of that world. So I'm going to pull, actually, I don't want to just go A tier, S tier, A tier, S tier. So I'm going to pull something else. I have Go Shogun here. Now, I liked Go Shogun, don't get me wrong. It's a very funny series. It's a pretty short series, 26 episodes. I felt that some episodes were a lot funnier than others. I haven't seen the movie yet, but this is a show that I didn't really have much to say about. I thought it was really funny. And if you're into like, it's interesting to see how mecha anime was falling into self-parody this early, because Go Shogun's only like 1981. But it's written by Takeshi Shudo, who also did Minky Momo and famously head writer of original Pokemon. And he brings a lot of great humor. The finale, the final scene of the final episode made me laugh out loud. That said, you know, it's good for laughs, but I didn't really leave, like, the characters didn't leave an impression on me. The writing did, but not necessarily the characters. I didn't feel like the characters felt unique enough. So while I appreciate a lot of the writing and the humor, I don't think the characters specifically were uniquely strong. So I will give Go Shogun a B tier, but it is a strong B tier. I'll put it above Tomo. Yeah, so it's strong B tier. Definitely check it out. And it's only 26 episodes, which I felt was actually the perfect length for something that's so self-aware. So it doesn't feel like it's getting kind of old and tired and sort of beating itself to death as it mocks the genre it's in. So yeah, solid B tier show. And I will check out the movie, even though I know the movie is not a comedy. The movie is a serious movie, which I'm interested to see how they do. Okay, so then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pick up Heavenly Delusion. And if you follow me on Twitter, you already fucking know. You already know. I am so Heavenly Delusion pilled. This could enter my top 10, but we need to see more. The anime is so good. I love the manga. The anime got me into the manga, and now I'm following the manga as it comes out. And I fucking love it. I got a bunch of friends into it. If you're into like Akira, this is like probably one of the best manga that takes a lot from Akira but does its own thing with it. I don't want to give too much away. It's a post-apocalyptic story where they're in a world where there's monsters and they're trying to survive and they're on a mission to reach a certain point, but the story takes twists and turns. There's alternate perspectives, and they sort of interconnect at points, which is really fun to see. But the manga is still ongoing. This could potentially be in my top 10. I'd like to see a second season, but I do know that right now, because I'm caught up with the manga is not at a place where they have enough material for a second season. I mean, even an issue I have with the first show is that it ends very abruptly, but reading the manga, there's like, the show doesn't have a stopping point, so there's no good point for them to have stopped where it wouldn't have felt abrupt. Without giving too much away, Heavenly Delusion is S tier. Check it out. So Victory Gundam. Victory Gundam was something that Chad Vision talked up a ton. It's probably one of his favorite Gundams. And he said that he watched it constantly going, well, when does it get bad? Because he had always heard that Victory Gundam is terrible. It's the worst Gundam. And I think that mostly just comes from the Tomino comment on the DVD where he told people don't watch it or whatever. Which Tomino has made a lot of very funny comments about his work. My favorite being when someone asked him what was the impetus of revisiting Zeta with the Zeta New Translation movies, and he just boldly says, some people wanted to make money. And I love Tomino for shit like that. So after he finished Victory Gundam and was talking it up a bunch, I said, I'll watch it, I'll give it a shot. And I once you get past those first 4 episodes where Bandai clearly took the series out of order because they wanted the Gundam in the first episode, I was honestly, I got into it. I was like, yeah, I'm feeling this. I think this is really good. You could tell that Bandai is throwing demands at Tomino and he is fulfilling them, and it's crazy how well he's fulfilling them. All the issues I hear from people are stuff like, well, Chronicle isn't a cool character, and I'm like, I like that he isn't a cool character. I like that Unky Chronicle is kind of he's just straight up a Nepo baby. That's literally his character, and I love that Tobito put a character like that in Victory Gundam. I don't want to give, this is another one where I don't want to give too much away. I thought that some of the scenes, the deaths, like, apparently they couldn't show someone dying in fire, but they showed someone get fucking beheaded, and they're like holding the helmet with the head, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Victory Gundam is a strong A tier. Alright, so moving on, Sasurai no Taiyo. Now, Sasurai no Taiyo, I watched because I read that it was considered the first idol anime, and it's an idol anime from the 70s, meaning it predates the Seiko Matsuda idol boom of the 80s, which of course had an influence on many shows like Macross specifically, which is how I know about it. So I watched it. It's only 26 episodes. It's by Mushi Pro, and there's a lot of similar aesthetics to Ashita no Joe, which I thought were interesting. I think the problem with it, though, is that the show is basically, you have 2 babies born in a hospital on the same day, and a nurse who clearly has evil intentions switches the babies. And the thing is that one baby is from a rich family and the other's from a poor family. So she switches them in order to like cause chaos. She's apparently wanting to get revenge on the family, and we don't know why. But she's like this. She's a nurse, but she looks like a blue demon. And then we follow the 2 girls as they meet as teenagers and their lives start to intertwine. And I think it starts to fall apart a little bit, especially towards the end where they try to make first of all, they retcon her being like a blue demon, and then they also try to make the nurse sympathetic, and I was like, now fuck that, what's actually going on here? And I thought all that was stupid. Honestly, Sasurai no Taiyo is going to be a C tier. It's going to be a C tier, and I don't think a lot of people are going to argue with that one. I think that's fair, honestly. Cyberpunk Edgerunner, this was one that people kept telling me to watch. I think it may have come out on Netflix in 2022, maybe, but I didn't watch it until 2023. I liked it a lot. I've seen a lot of Lucy hate. I really like Lucy as a character. I would say I don't really have much to say about Cyberpunk. Really cool animation. I love the soundtrack. I like the characters. I would say this is probably going to be like a high B tier. Maybe a high B tier, maybe a low A tier, maybe. That's how I'm feeling about Cyberpunk. High B tier, low A tier. Anne of Green Gables. So I was trying to look up some of the Masterpiece theaters, and I was like, I kind of want to, I don't think I've ever really watched one of those. Dororo is, technically considered a Masterpiece theater, but doesn't really fit the rest of them. Doesn't really fit with the bunch. So I was like, well, let me see some of the Masterpiece theaters people talk about. And the two big ones are Anne of Green Gables and Heidi Girl of the Alps. And I don't know why I chose Anne of Green Gables, but I downloaded it and I pulled up an episode, and I just fell in love with it. I wound up watching the entire series in 2 weeks. It's incredibly sad. I resonated with all the characters. I thought it was a beautiful show, and I got so into it. This was really like a complete surprise. It lived up to the hype, and I don't know much more I can say about it other than this was a show that needed to be an S tier. Another thing that I resonated with was the feeling of there's a time skip, and when they come back, there's like a new guy working on the farm, and there's this feeling of like, oh, this is a guy that we really know, but even though you're part of the family, you don't really know him. And that was something I resonated with as someone who's, been moved out of my parents' house. I haven't lived with my parents since I was 19, and I'm now 30. But the idea, and I live in a different state than them, so the idea of visiting home and there's someone new there that I don't know, but who is essentially part of the family to them, it felt so familiar. And that was so interesting to see in Anne of Green Gables. Hikaru no Go is a show, so you'll notice, so fun fact, I have ADHD, because I literally put on an episode of Hikaru no Go because I was just bored out of my mind, and I was just scrolling through the streaming services, and I saw that Hulu had Hikaru no Go, the entire series, and I was like, well, I know this show was popular, right? It was pretty popular. I think the manga got a release over here, and it's considered like a very well-respected Shonen Jump title, and the art's by the guy who did Death Note, so he's a respected name. Let me see what this show's like. And I think I watched all of it in like 15 days. It's a 75 episode show. This is another Anne of Green Gables where it's just like I was so into it. I think what I relate to with Hikaru no Go is, while I don't know how to play Go, or I didn't when I started, I watched some tutorials because I got so into it, but they don't even really teach you how to play Go because that doesn't matter. It's about the drama that occurs and the drama between the characters. And I know I'm basically saying unlike most sports anime that focus on the sport, this one focuses on the characters, but I was expecting something more akin to Yu-Gi-Oh, where Yu-Gi-Oh, they teach you the game, and then the games are sort of like a shonen battle, where the cards are their attacks, and they're trying to outmaneuver each other. I was expecting something like that, whereas Yu-Gi-Oh is more like a battle shonen, Hikaru no Go is more like a sports anime. It's more about the characters' interactions and their drama. And I could relate to that as someone who, while I haven't played sports since I was a kid, I've played games competitively. And it's something Akira Toya is a character that you can really relate to. It actually reminded me a lot of Ping Pong, where the anime Ping Pong, it got very popular in the Smash community because the Smash community could relate to those characters where they play a game and they take it so seriously and their lives basically depend on being good at this game. And yet Smash Bros is a game that people look at and think, that's a children's game. Why do you take that seriously? You're dumb for taking that seriously. And the characters in Ping Pong are kind of the same, where Ping Pong isn't a game you think about as a serious game, but to them it's very important. And so I can understand why Smash players specifically related so much to it. And that was how I felt with Hikaru no Go, where Go is sort of seen as this game that old Japanese men play when they smoke a cigarette and, just trying to kill time on an afternoon. But they take it very seriously, and they dedicate their lives to playing this game and pushing themselves further and improving themselves by playing this game really well. It's similar to me where I've played games like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic the Gathering, and I've gone to like local tournaments and stuff, and I've always taken it so seriously. And people don't think it's weird to take seriously, but no, it's important to you. And I understand that competitive mindset, and that's why I relate to characters like Akira Toya. So Hikaru no Go, that for me is going to be an A tier. Again, these A tiers, I'm not really putting them in order. They're just all really good, but I think Hikaru no Go is on the higher end of the A tiers. So this show here is like, it's called like the Irregular Circumstances of the Witch Family. I don't even remember the title. So I watched this because it had a really cute character design, and I was like, oh, I'll check this out. And I watched a couple episodes, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. It's kind of, that's all it is. It's just like gags and cute girls. But I kept watching it, and then towards around episode 9, I started to just succumb to the sunk cost fallacy, which is basically me saying, well, I've already watched 9 episodes. If I can just sit through, 3 more, I can mark it as completed on Mal. And, yeah, I don't know why I did that. This is an F tier. I still think that, Viola's character design is cute, and some of the gags are fun, but, like, yeah, I did not enjoy watching that show, and by the end of it, I was forcing myself to watch it so that I could just have the bragging rights of saying, well, at least I completed it. Total F tier. Oshi no Ko. So Oshi no Ko, out the gate, was like an A tier, and then the rest of the show was like solid, it's kind of like B, high C tier, but like that first episode that's like an hour and a half because there's a major twist, and they had to make sure that twist was in the first episode, so they had to make it an hour and a half long. I think it's a great fucking twist, and I love it, and it kind of sold the show to me. But I did feel like, oh, this should have been 2 cores, because I don't feel like we got a decent resolution by the end of the batch of episodes we got. And I know that most anime don't want to do 2 cores. Hey, Undead Unluck is doing 2 cores. Daigo is doing 2 cores. I'm liking both of those shows. Oshi no Ko should have been 2 cores because they needed another 12 episodes. I didn't feel like I got a decent resolution. While I like the show and I thought it had a stellar opening, I am going to put this in B tier. Possibly high C tier, but let's go B tier actually. Thinking over, I did enjoy it. Yeah, it's a B tier, but I wish they had done another core, because I think it just needed more content. It needed more stuff to happen. Okay, so now we have Tokyo Mew Mew. Now, I watched the new Tokyo Mew Mew with my girlfriend, and we enjoyed it, but I felt like it was kind of missing something. We only watched the first season, and I'm still planning to watch the second season sometime soon, but out of curiosity, it made me want to go back and watch the original, because I'd never seen the original. I had seen like episodes of the 4Kids Mew Mew Power, and I had heard a lot of the jokes that fans made about how they changed things, but I'd never seen the original show for myself. And also, apparently the show got a bad rap early on the internet because the original fan subs were to broadcast rips, which had unfinished animation. So that's kind of a shame, but now there are decent quality rips online with fan subs, and I watched it, and honestly, I liked it. I thought that it was actually much better than the new show. I've only seen the first season, but like I felt like it has the Sailor Moon thing where because it's longer and because there's quote-unquote filler episodes, it gives the individual characters more time to shine, and it shows off the uniqueness of their personalities, whereas in something like Sailor Moon Crystal, after their introduction episodes, the Sailor Scouts start to feel like a homogenized group of friends who are just like generic Usagi friend, as opposed to having those unique personalities, which they have in full force in the 90s show. So Tokyo Mew Mew, I loved it. My favorite, Lettuce or Ratasu, depending on which subs you watch. That is going through old forum posts and seeing arguments about whether her name should be Lettuce or Ratasu. Literally brightened my day. So yeah, Ratasu is my favorite. I think she's really sweet. She's despite not being blue, she's the green one. She is kind of like the Sailor Mercury of the group. Anyway, I'm just talking about my favorites. Megumi Ogata plays a boy with another boy trapped inside him, which is a really unique concept, I know, but I thought she was great. And yeah, Tokyo Mew Mew from 2000, I believe this was 2002. It's going to be B tier, and I also do want to point out that while there are episodes that have great animation, there's some with some wonky animation, but all the wonky animation feels like it's entirely due to the team still getting used to using digital effects, because there's some weird looking digital effects in episodes, but it doesn't feel like lack of competency as an artist, but rather just we're not familiar with this technology, so we guess this is how we'll do it. But yeah, I don't hold, even though it has some of those digital effects I hate, I don't hold it too much against them for it. Tezuka Saiyuki. Now, Tezuka Saiyuki was a fun watch. I didn't think it was too long of a movie, and it was interesting seeing this version of Journey to the West, because pretty much the entire time I was catching like, oh, this is similar to when this show referenced Journey to the West, or this is similar to Dragon Ball. One thing I thought was interesting was there's a black keen tone. I think that it's the pig character Hakai gets a black keen tone, which is the what they call the cloud. And I remember there's a Dragon Ball filler episode where Tao Pai Pai gets a black keen tone, and I was wondering actually if that Dragon Ball filler came from this movie, because this is a Toei movie. I never got an answer on that, but I just thought that was an interesting observation, was that, oh, there's a black keen tone. Maybe there's a black keen tone in the original Journey to the West. I'd never seen it in any of the other adaptations, but that's just a random thing I noticed. There's also Native American stereotypes, which I love to see. So definitely, yeah, check it out, Saiyuki. Probably a B tier. As far as like those old Toei movies go, they're animated really well. They're fun to watch. They don't really overstay their welcome. Not one of my favorites, but like it's fun. It's a fun watch. Okay, Under Ninjas. Okay, so Under Ninja, I knew about because it was put out by Dempa Books, who I believe are owned by the owner of Faku, Jacob, I believe. They are like a smaller scale manga licensor, but because they're smaller scale, like everything misses its release date and gets pushed back. Like a friend of mine ordered a Kaiji volume for my birthday, and he said, oh, it got delayed, so it's going to be in July. My birthday's at the end of June. And he's like, it's going to be July. And I was like, okay. And then every couple months he would come back to me and say, the Kaiji manga has been pushed back until December. And then just a couple days ago, he goes, looks like it got pushed back till March. So this is going to be the latest birthday present I've probably ever received. And then also they've had trouble stocking Heavenly Delusion, which I understand it was kind of a low-key series. And then with the anime, it popped off, but they've like struggled to keep it, in stock. But yeah, so that's how I know of them, is that they do series I like, but I'm always seeing that like stuff is getting delayed or is out of stock. But I know that Under Ninja was one of their series, and so I was like, oh, okay. So even though their series are like lower key, they're generally really good. Like Kaiji's great, Heavenly Delusion's great. So I was like, okay, let me check out Under Ninja. It's by Tezuka Productions, which is interesting. I didn't even realize they were still around. It opens with some awful CG and some English that is bad, but not funny bad, which is the worst kind of bad. And I think the first episode is actually probably the worst episode of the series, and I can understand why so many people, it looks like they dropped it on episode 1. The show has a lot of humor that I would compare to a Adult Swim show, which I thought was really cool, and I thought that those scenes were funny. But I also thought the action animation was pretty bad and not engaging. And I didn't really care for the story or where it was going. I like the idea of this guy who's like a hobo. He's like a hobo ninja for hire. But like the story was not grabbing me, and there was not enough humor for me to like really feel like, okay, I can recommend this to someone because it's funny enough. While I do give it some credit, I am gonna put it as a C tier. It's honestly probably a low C tier. I gave it a shot, and I definitely got stuff out of it, but not enough. Just wasn't there. Pluto. Okay, so I should say that Pluto, I read the manga before the anime came out. I started reading it back in like 2017, got through like 6 volumes, and then put it on hold until the pandemic, and then I finished it. But I loved Pluto as a manga. One of the few times where I read a manga before it was adapted into an anime, and I was not disappointed with the anime adaptation. If anything, I think my only issue is that because I knew where the story was going, and because mystery is a big aspect of it, it didn't have as big of an impact on me as it may have had on some other people. Otherwise, the animation, the story, and the characters are all there, and it's all great. I just think that it would have been S tier, weirdly enough, if I had read the manga afterwards, but I still loved it, thought it was great, and I am going to put it in A tier. But like I said, I think in this case, just because mystery is a big aspect of the story, knowing where the mystery was going made it so that the reveals didn't have as big of an impact on me. But that's just a theory, a game theory. Thanks for watching. Sailor Moon Eternal. I watched both Sailor Moon Eternal movies, but I have them here as like one thing. Don't worry about it. It's fine. They can be one thing. While I didn't like Crystal, I felt like at least the 3rd season of Crystal was a little better. They did a much better job of characterizing each of the Sailor Scouts to be more unique as opposed to the homogenized group of Usagi friends. And then in 4, or rather Eternal, the movie, I thought they continued this trend of making sure the Sailor Scouts felt unique, and I liked that. They hang out, they do shit outside of being Sailor Scouts. And Eternal, it felt like they still managed to have those character moments, but also they had an excuse for it mostly being plot that I was totally on board with. So Eternal was probably my favorite of the remake Sailor Moon stuff. It's not going to be A tier, but I will give it a B tier. Moving on, we got Babel II. This is the 1973 Toei anime. This is the original TV series for Babel II. And it's actually the last Babel II anime I needed to watch. I'd already seen the OVA and the Akira Tsuburaya Babel II Infinity, but I'd never seen the original. One thing to point out, though, is that only the first 12 episodes were subbed by a reputable fan subgroup. The rest was subbed by ARR, which, if you know them, they're kind of trolls. And so they would insert things into the subs that weren't there, like Yomi calling Koichi a 4chaner and stuff like that. Just like stuff that didn't need to be there. And like weird pro-Russia propaganda, which I am still not sure if that was real or if that was just them being trolls. But regardless, there's some annoying stuff in the subs if you decide to watch it. I also felt like the animation in the show got really wonky at points. It looks beautiful because it is like it is one of the last Toei shows to go into production with 35mm film before Toei switched all their shows to 16mm to save money. And that means that it has Blu-ray rips and they look fucking gorgeous. Also, the last 13 episodes were an extension. So it's like Yomi dies in episode 26, but then Koichi just has to go on more adventures, and then they do like they basically do Somehow Palpatine Has Returned. And honestly, people said those last 13 episodes are garbage, but I thought they were pretty fun. I would not, if you're going to watch the series, I would totally say don't skip them. There's an episode that's like entirely a parody of The Day the Earth Stood Still, which I thought was pretty cool. There's one where like a robot attaches its legs to a battleship and then like hijacks the battleship by flying away with it. And I thought that was pretty funny. Other than that, though, it is pretty clunky, and I think even Babel II, which, you know, this is probably manga accurate, but like there was some stuff where I'm like, oh, this is kind of just, you know, there was some stuff from earlier Yokoyama works, you know, of him like reusing ideas, and even him reusing ideas from Ishinomori stuff. Like there's two assassins in an earlier episode, and it just totally reminded me of 0010 Plus and 0010 Minus. There's a robot that he has to kill, and the way he kills it is that he has to like destroy the heart, and the heart is inside of like a mace that the robot swings. And that kind of reminded me of the robot they fight in the Birth arc, where I've always made the joke of, oh, it's a robot with a heart. I have mixed feelings, but I enjoyed watching it. It is a higher C tier. Akuma Kun, I had no idea this was coming out, and then it just dropped on Netflix, and Netflix didn't advertise it. I love the style. I thought they did a really cool job of bringing the characters to life, or rather bringing the style into the modern age. I thought that looked awesome. It directed by Junichi Sato, which didn't know Junichi Sato was still making anime. That fucking rules. Again, it sets itself up for a second season at the end, but like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I'm actually totally on board with that. I think that the dub voice acting in this was really good. I'm not a fan of Akuma Kun's voice because he sounds a little too casual, a little too aloof, but like Mephisto and his father's voice acting, both of them are incredible. I think that those are like incredible voices for those characters, and I love their portrayal as specifically Mephisto I think it's Mephisto the Third and Mephisto the Second. But I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm gonna give this a solid B tier. All right, so Fooly Cooly Alternative. While here's the thing, is that like that people won't tell you, and this is gonna like, this might blow your mind a little bit, but like while everyone shits on all the new Fooly Coolies, and trust me, I'm there, I still look at my Blu-ray box of Fooly Cooly that says Fooly Cooly the Complete Series, and I go, it sure is. Alternative is actually good. It's not like the other series. Unlike other Fooly Coolies, Fooly Cooly Alternative focuses on the characters, but no, Alternative actually did stand out to me as being like a lot better than the other series. And if I don't recommend any of the other Fooly Coolies, but I would say check out Alternative. I think it's actually like a really cool follow-up to the original. My only issue is that like I felt like episode 5 and 6, it felt like there were 2 major climaxes in the show where it should have been 1. And I wonder if that's because they needed it to be 6 episodes. I know there was some issue where the American version is like a 6-episode show, but in Japan it was just a movie. And because of that, actually, they're cut differently. And because they're cut differently, if you buy the Blu-ray for Alternative is dub only. Same for Progressive. Progressive and Alternative are dub only, which was a big reason I didn't want to get the release, because I was just like, I wish you could fit a second movie on here. Like, I know that they can't be the same track, but like, you could fit the subbed movie on this disc. Come on. But I would definitely recommend it. Check out Alternative. This is also going to be in a B tier. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. I liked this a lot, and I liked it a lot more after I switched to the Japanese track. Scott Pilgrim Takes Off. I don't care what Mal says, it is an anime because it has a bad dub. I think that Mal not including this was really stupid, especially when they have stuff like, my first thing was like, well, they have Cannon Busters though, and like that's it's made by an American creator, but it's like an anime staff in Japan, I believe. And it's like, okay, but you have Cannon Buster. How is Cannon Buster more anime than Scott Pilgrim Takes Off? And then I looked into it more, and like my anime list has all these like Chinese movies, and they literally have Squirrel and Hedgehog, which is a North Korean propaganda cartoon, and I looked into it, and I'll say this, most people on Mal also think it's ridiculous. There's tons of threads where people are like, how are you going to say Squirrel and Hedgehog is more anime than fucking Scott Pilgrim made in Japan by a Japanese studio? And the arguments I'm seeing are all just like people saying, what do you want to add next? The Last Airbender? It's like, no, but like, this is a Japanese work. It is made in Japan. And they make the argument of intended for a Japanese audience, which is not a rule, but a guideline. It should be a guideline because, yes, there is some stuff animated in Japan that shouldn't be considered anime. Frosty the Snowman shouldn't be considered anime. It doesn't have the flavor of anime. It doesn't have that touch that people go to anime for, right? Episodes of Batman the Animated Series, not anime. The Last Airbender, not anime. I mean, that one's animated in Korea, so it's super not anime. But like, as far as like being a Western property, there's shit like Lensman and the S-ranked Anne of Green Gables that are anime. And then like, they have Chinese and Korean material because they say, well, there's enough cultural blending with Japan that if it's made in Japan, if it's made in China or Korea, specifically for the Chinese-Korean market, we'll include it. And it's like, Squirrel and Hedgehog is North Korean propaganda. There was a person arguing, and I totally agree with this, that Squirrel and Hedgehog, you know, it's North Korean. North Korea has sought to destroy Korean culture. Like, how are you going to say that this is made for Korea? Like, it's kind of insulting, really. And back in the day, I was reading that there were arguments on Mal over whether or not Transformers should be included. And the consensus was that G1, it shouldn't be included because it was made for an American audience. And I agree, because it doesn't feel like anime. It doesn't have that flavor of anime. The Transformers movie doesn't have that flavor of anime. They have the Headmasters because that was made specifically for the Japanese audience. And it's like, okay, you can argue maybe that doesn't deserve to be there. But like, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is far from a gray area, I believe. I believe it strongly falls into the category of anime. And the only arguments I see on that site of people saying why it shouldn't be is that they literally just keep saying, well, what do you want us to add, Avatar The Last Airbender next? And it's like, no, that's not the argument. And I don't know. I thought it was really, really weird. But as for the show itself, I enjoyed it. I did have to switch to the subs because the voice acting is bad. I guess that's what happens when you cast your voice actors not by their talent, but by whether or not they looked like the characters 10 years ago. But once I switched to the sub, I was enjoying it a ton. And like, in Japanese, Knives is so fucking kawaii. I love it. I'm gonna give Scott Pilgrim a B tier. I've never really been into like the Scott. I have seen the movie like 10 years ago now, but I'd never really gotten into it because there was a part of me that saw it as a sort of like Control-Alt-Delete type thing where it's like, haha, epic gamer references. And it's not like that. Scott Pilgrim's a little bit better than that, but I've never been a big video game guy, so like that kind of stuff never did anything for me. I guess I should say. I guess I shouldn't compare it to Control-Alt-Delete, but it never really did much for me. But I like the art style. I thought the humor was good, and I enjoyed the Japanese version. So I'll give it a B tier. Dynazenon. I thought Dynazenon was... Now, okay, so Chad was giving me shit because I had forgotten stuff from Gridman, and I had to remind him that I watched Gridman when it came out in 2018, so it has been 5 fucking years since I've seen the show, because we watched Dynazenon this year and we loved it, and he kept comparing it to things in Gridman, and I'm like, oh, I forgot that happened. He's like, how do you forget that happened? Did you even really watch the show? And I was like, I watched it when it came out 5 years ago. But I did like Dynazenon. I love Dynazenon a bunch. I actually think the characters are way more memorable than the Gridman characters. The only Gridman characters people remember are the ones they jerked off to. And granted, while I am jerking off to Gamma, I also thought he had a really strong backstory and motivation. So, yeah, Dynazenon is going to be an A tier. Wonderful World of Puss in Boots. Got this Blu-ray from Discotek, and I've historically liked Toei's movies from the 60s. Flying Phantom Ship, I think, is a great movie, and I will... Now that it has a dub, I can actually just put it on in the background some days and just play it. And I think the dub for that movie is excellent. So well done. I think Patrick Seitz is incredible as the Skull Captain. Wonderful World in Puss in Boots, I liked it a lot. And I was noticing, now Hiroshi Ikeda did the Flying Phantom Ship, and he would later leave Toei to work at Nintendo. And you could see some of that Toei influence in the early Nintendo art styles. But while I was watching Puss in Boots, which isn't Hiroshi Ikeda directing, I was still noticing that Nintendo look, because Hiroshi Ikeda transplanted into Nintendo. But I was getting like a lot of Zelda vibes watching it. I was Lucifer, who's the villain, was reminding me a lot of Ganon. And then the ending with the castle was reminding me a lot of Castle of Cagliostro. I just thought it was a really fun time. I enjoyed watching it. This is going to be... I'm going to put this in an A tier. It's kind of a lower A tier because I don't think the characters necessarily resonated with me. It was more of really enjoying the animation. The story itself didn't really do anything specifically for me, but it was so much fun to watch it while I watched it. I don't know if it should be high B tier or low A tier. But maybe I'll high B tier. I'll say high B tier. The story's not like anything incredible. It is a kids movie from the 60s, but the animation and the art is so much fun that I enjoyed watching it. I absolutely enjoyed it. Rurouni Kenshin, the elephant in the room. So while I don't like what the creator of Rurouni Kenshin did, Rurouni Kenshin is like a story that I genuinely love, and it's so unfortunate that it has been marred with the creator's actions. It's not reflected in the work. Like, there's nothing in the work that would imply that he, anything towards children, harm towards children. Which is why it's so sad, because like the themes and the story of Rurouni Kenshin are so strong and beautiful, and it sucks that they're just attached to a person who is, I don't want to say caused harm, but like someone who has abetted harm to children, I'll say. And I don't like that. And I was so happy that while they were still dubbing it, the voice actors did say that they would be giving proceeds of their paycheck to charities to help children. They didn't have to do that, but when I saw that, it made me really happy, because it feels like even though this series is marred by such a terrible thing, that like it is now causing something positive. It is being used as a force to help children now. And I understand that there's people who will refuse to interact with the series. There's people who like, I can't separate the work from the creator. And I understand when people do that. I haven't really had that issue personally. There are still like specifically like musicians who have done things that, I don't support anything they do, but like, I admit I still listen to their music. It's more of a me thing. I'm not trying to do anything bad. It's just like, I still listen to Remix to Ignition, right? But as for this series, I didn't feel like it really improved on the 90s show until you get to the Oniwaban group. I actually really liked how they animated these fights. I felt like the Oniwaban group fights in the old anime were lacking. And so that was like the, I think Hainya is the guy who has like the Wolverine claws. That was the first fight where I was like, okay, this is actually a step up from what they did in the 90s. And so, yeah, I think it's a fine series. It's a fine remake. They did include some stuff that was removed from the manga originally, and they did cut out some weird filler that was in the show, like the sumo wrestler guy and the cannonball girl. They did have to do their own little filler arc for 2 episodes because they had to reach Shishio by episode 24, but they ran out of material too early, which was kind of funny. But regardless, I thought it was a fine series. I'm going to give it a low B tier. And like I said, again, it sucks that the series is marred by what Watsuki did, but I'm at least glad that they are using the popularity of the series as a force for good now. And then we have Marvelous Melmo, a series that sexualizes children. That's going to be an S tier. Loved it. Fucking thought the panty shots were hilarious. When she TFs into all those weird animals, I was going bonkers. That was just like, whoa. I shouted awooga, made work whistle noises, and then turned into a cartoon wolf. Everything in this series was incredible and made me feel alive. This has been my tier list for 2023. Thanks for coming.